My parents hired a private investigator and found out I was a millionaire, then tried to sue me for parental investment. You know those families where, when you walk into their house, every photo is like a shrine to one kid? That was ours. Except I wasn't the kid in the pictures. That was Ryan, my older brother. The golden child. The hometown hero. The one they whispered about at church luncheons and PTA meetings like he was Moses walking down from the mountain with straight A's and varsity letters. And me? I was the one taking the pictures. Or cropping them. Or being cropped out of them. It wasn't always cruel. At least, not in the obvious, slam-the-door kind of way. It was subtler than that. Quiet favoritism. Polite neglect. Praise for Ryan that doubled as critique for me. Ryan's always been so focused. You've got your creative side, I guess. Ryan's film short made the local paper. Ethan, when are you going to show us your little hobby projects? You should ask your brother for advice. He's got that natural drive. Every compliment to him was a warning shot aimed at me. Before we go further, don't forget to like this story, hit subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss what happens next. Growing up in Plainfield, Indiana, in a two-story house that always smelled faintly like lemon pine sol and unresolved resentment, I learned early how to shrink. I didn't rebel. I didn't throw tantrums. I just stopped expecting anything. When I got accepted to Roosevelt West University on a partial scholarship, they barely reacted. Ryan had just landed an internship at a boutique film house in LA. That news swallowed the room whole. When I got my first real job, junior developer at a tiny startup in Seattle, they asked if I considered moving back to help with things around the house. But here's the thing about growing up invisible. You learn to pay attention. You notice details, patterns, cracks in people's masks. While they were playing favorites, I was building my own life in the background. Quietly, relentlessly. At Everlight Tech Solutions, I didn't just write code. I solved the thing no one else wanted to touch, a messy API integration problem that had been buried in their backlog for 6 months. My fix made the product 70% faster. I got noticed, promoted, equity, and when Everlight sold to Cascade Innovations 2 years later, I walked away with a little over $2 million. After taxes, no loans, no debt, no one to share it with. Because by that point, I had learned that nothing angers small-hearted people more than you doing well without them. I didn't tell my family. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted peace. I moved to a quiet part of Seattle, bought a clean, modest condo with cash, and started investing. Not just in the stock market and myself. I hired a therapist, joined a nonprofit board, took weekend writing workshops. I stopped checking their Facebook feeds. Stopped waiting for texts. The silence felt like freedom. Until last fall. Thanksgiving came around. I skipped it. Again. Sent a polite, traveling this year, excuse, and spent the day volunteering at a local shelter. It was simple. Kind. No expectations. But then, 2 weeks later, I got a letter. Not a text. Not an email. A formal envelope, return address from Maxwell Indhart Investigative Services in Indianapolis. I almost tossed it as spam. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a photocopied report. My life. Pulled from public records, social media traces, LinkedIn updates, real estate filings. At the bottom, a handwritten note. You should have told us. Family doesn't keep secrets like this. No signature. But I knew the handwriting. My mother's. It hit me like a punch. Not just that they'd found out. That they paid someone to dig into my life. To confirm their suspicions. To see if the invisible son had somehow managed to succeed without their permission. And now? They wanted in. The next day, I got a call from my father. He didn't say hello. Didn't ask how I'd been. Just this. Son, you know, we supported you all those years. Morally. Emotionally. Maybe it's time you return the favor. We're having a bit of a cash squeeze. Like I owed them royalties for surviving childhood. Like they were investors in a product they never helped develop. I didn't reply. I hung up. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt clarity. But I knew this wasn't over. People like my parents don't just take rejection. They turn it into vendettas. And sure enough, the next call came from a lawyer. Not mine. Theirs. The envelope came certified. I remember standing in the lobby of my building, still holding a half-full coffee cup, when the clerk handed it to me. Pale cream paper, too stiff, like it was trying to be important. Letterhead, Johnson, Rayner Inshields LLP. My stomach sank. I hadn't done anything illegal. I knew that. But trauma makes you doubt even your own innocence. Inside was a 6-page letter. Most of it bloated legal language that boiled down to this. Our clients, Charles and Susan Brooks, have become aware of significant undisclosed personal assets belonging to their son, Mr. Ethan Brooks. Given the considerable financial and emotional support provided to him throughout his development, our clients believe a portion of these assets were unjustly accumulated at the expense of familial investment. Familial investment. Like they were shareholders in my existence. I read it 3 times before I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was surreal. These were the same people who never showed up to my university graduation because Ryan was screening a student film that night. The same people who sent Christmas cards that never once mentioned my job, my life, or even my zip code. And now they were asking, legally, for a cut of my life? I forwarded the letter to a friend of mine, Liz, who worked in legal compliance at Cascade Innovations. Her reply was immediate. Not enforceable. But it's weird as hell. Want me to refer you to someone? Yes, I did. And by the next morning, I had a calm, calculated woman named Janice Lee on the phone. Corporate litigator turned private consultant. This isn't law, she said after reading the documents. It's intimidation dressed up in letterhead. But the fact that they hired someone to put this together means they're not bluffing emotionally, even if they are legally. So what do? You write them back. And you do it without apology. So I did. I sent a response via Janice's office. I do not acknowledge any financial obligation, explicit or implied, to Charles and Susan Brooks. Any support offered during my upbringing was given voluntarily and without the condition of repayment, nor was such repayment ever discussed or documented. I consider this matter closed. Any further attempts to contact me regarding this issue will be directed to legal counsel. Within 24 hours, my phone lit up like it had caught fire. Text from my parents. From Ryan. From Aunt Karen in New York, the only relative who ever treated me like a human being, who had somehow been dragged into the situation. Karen's message. Just got off a call with your mother. She's telling everyone you're suing them. What the hell is going on? I explained. Briefly. Karen took a beat, then replied, you know she used to pull this stuff with your grandfather, too. The guilt spiral. The silence punishment. I'm sorry, Ethan. You were right to set boundaries. But that was just the beginning. The real explosion happened online. A few days later, I got a ping from a college friend. Dude, check your mom's Facebook post. I didn't want to, but I did. There it was. We raised our son with love and sacrifice. To find out he's hiding a secret fortune while we struggle, it's heartbreaking. Families should lift each other up, not cut each other out. The comments were full of people who didn't know me, who had never met me, saying things like, he sounds ungrateful. You did your best, Susan. Some kids just lose their way. Entitled millennial trash. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not sad. Not even angry. Just tired. Because there's nothing lonelier than watching strangers defend the people who broke you. And Ryan? He finally chimed in. A simple public comment on the post. Some things money can't buy. That was the last straw. I messaged him directly. You want to talk? Talk to me, not to Facebook. He replied, funny. You had a whole secret life, and we're the ones being dramatic. I didn't hide it. I just didn't announce it. Same thing. I blocked him. Later that night, I got a voicemail from my father. Son, look, we may have overreacted, but you have to understand, we were just surprised. It felt like a betrayal. I didn't reply. Because the truth was this, they weren't mad that I had money. They were mad that I had something they didn't control. The next day, I met Janice in person. She'd done more digging. The PI they used? Maxwell and Hart? Not cheap. Your parents paid thousands to verify something you could have just told them, if you trusted them. I didn't. Exactly. She slid a folder across the table. You're clean. But if they keep pushing, and I think they will, you need to be ready for escalation. Like what? Public pressure. Slander. Maybe even contacting your employer. I blinked. They wouldn't. She didn't smile. They already sent a legal letter. There's no bottom when entitlement gets wounded. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of water, looking out over the lights of the city I'd built a life in. Alone. Free. And I thought about every time my parents made me feel like I was only valuable when I was quiet. Now I had the kind of voice they couldn't shut down. And they hated it. Then I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Checked it after. Hey, it's Ryan. We need to talk. Alone. Not about mom and dad. About me. I think you need to hear something. I met Ryan at a diner off I-65, halfway between where I lived in Seattle and where he was visiting a friend in Portland. He picked it. Neutral ground. In public. No pressure. I agreed, but not because I trusted him. I just wanted to hear the story straight from the mouth of the golden child. He looked tired. Thinner than I remembered. Not in a healthy way. In a stress way. Wearing the same black jacket he wore in college, fraying around the sleeves. He waved me over like we were old friends. I sat down and didn't say a word. He started talking before the waitress could even hand us menus. Look, before you say anything, I know I messed up. I waited. He kept going. I didn't ask them to hire the investigator. That was Mom. But I knew you had money. I told them. I blinked. How? A mutual friend. You remember Davis from Roosevelt West? He's working in tech too. He mentioned he saw you at some startup networking event. Said your name was on a keynote list. I Googled it. Found the sale announcement. Then I told them. Why? Because, he hesitated. Looked down at the table. Because I was tired of hearing them talk about me like I was some hero and you were just out there floundering. And because I was broke. He paused. Then said the quiet part out loud. I was hoping you'd offer to help. Just a little. I should have been furious. But honestly, I was just disappointed. He wasn't evil. He was small. The worst kind of betrayal, not calculated malice, but selfish mediocrity wrapped in brotherly guilt. So what, Ryan? You fed them half a story, let them fill in the rest, and now you want to make peace. No, he said quickly. I want to tell you something else. Something they won't. Then he pulled out a folded legal document from his backpack. Yellowed. A little frayed around the corners. He laid it flat on the table. This is Grandpa Brooks' original will. I scanned it. A trust. A name. A note in neat cursive. To Ethan, the one who notices things. I looked up. He left something to me? Ryan nodded. $20,000. Set aside in a separate account. Payable upon your college graduation. I never got that. I know. Silence. Then, they took it, he said. They told the lawyer you dropped out. That you didn't finish. Said you were off writing scripts or something. The lawyer was some old friend of Dad's. Never verified it. They kept the check. And spent it. Used it to buy Ryan a camera package, he added, voice low. For that film internship. You remember? The one I didn't even end up finishing. It hit like a sucker punch. Not because of the money, but because of the deliberate erasure. They saw my name on that trust. They read the words my grandfather left behind. And they chose to rewrite the narrative. Why are you telling me this now? He hesitated. Then shrugged. Because you're not the one who's been failing lately. I am. And I guess I got tired of being their puppet. That didn't make him a hero. But it did make him human. Before we left, he reached into his backpack again. Pulled out a thick envelope. It's copies. Everything from the trust. Notes. The check they never gave you. I figured. You should at least have it now. I took it. Still didn't say thank you. Just walked out. Later that night, I opened it all again. Read through the notes my grandfather left, meticulous, detailed. He hadn't forgotten me. He'd seen what the rest of them didn't bother looking for. And he tried to leave a light on. I called Janice. Told her everything. She listened. Asked one question. Do you want to press charges? No, I said. But I want a statement on the record. I want them to know I know. Done. A week later, she sent a formal notice to the family estate attorney, stating the mishandling of Ethan's inheritance had been confirmed and that any further deception would be met with legal action. She copied my parents. Their lawyer didn't respond. Neither did they. But that was the silence I needed. Instead, I got a letter in the mail. From Aunt Karen. Short. Your grandfather would have been proud. I'm sorry it took all of us so long to see you. Taped inside was a photo. Me, age 8, at the lake house. Fishing rod in one hand. My grandfather's arm around my shoulders. Smiling. Proof I had never been invisible, just inconvenient. A week passed. No new letters. No phone calls from my parents. The legal firm never followed up after Janice's response. For the first time in months, things were quiet. So, of course, Ryan called again. I've been thinking, he said, like we were mid-conversation and I hadn't blocked his number just a few weeks earlier. We've both been screwed in different ways. What if we stopped trying to fix the past and actually built something? I let him talk. Mostly because I wanted to know how far he'd go. Look, you're obviously smart. And I've got connections. I'd been developing this pitch deck for a film tech hybrid, basically a streaming platform for independent short films, kind of like Letterboxd meets Substack, but curated. I said nothing. So he kept going. And I was thinking, like, with your tech background and my content background, we could actually do something here. It's not about Mom and Dad. It's about us. It wasn't a bad idea. That was the worst part. It had potential. I'd heard dumber concepts funded for millions. But this wasn't about the pitch. It was about the pattern. The moment he saw a door open, Ryan tried to wedge himself into it, even if he'd burned the last 10 behind him. Why me? I asked, finally. Because I trust you. I actually laughed at that. No, really. You're the only one who's been real in this family. I mean, I was the favorite, sure, but that didn't mean anything. You were the one who saw everything. Then why lie to me for a decade? He paused. Because it was easier. And there it was. We met up again. Neutral spot. Same diner. Different tone. Ryan brought a tablet loaded with mock-ups, a rough brand strategy, even a demo prototype. He wasn't playing. He'd clearly been working. But that's when I started noticing the same old habits. He talked at the waitress. Cut her off when she asked clarifying questions. Referred to developers as code monkeys. Explained basic concepts to me like I hadn't spent the last 5 years scaling product teams. It wasn't arrogance exactly. It was performance. He hadn't changed. He'd just rebranded. Back home, I opened the deck again. It was fine. Not great. Rough around the edges. A few ideas were lifted from existing platforms. One logo design was pulled straight from Behance, watermark still embedded in the corner. I dug deeper. 2 of the names listed as early advisors on the last slide, not real people. One was a made-up alias. The other, a YouTube film critic Ryan once emailed but never heard back from. He was trying to fake it till I funded it. I called Janice again. He's trying to pivot into co-founder mode. Anything I should know? Yes. If you give him a single dollar, make sure you're protected. Ironclad contract. Otherwise, he'll drag you down with him if it sinks. You think it will? I think people don't change just because they're desperate. They just get more charming. I didn't sleep much that night. It wasn't about the money. It was about the choice. After all these years of being the outsider, now I was the gatekeeper. The one with leverage. The one who could say yes or no and have it actually mean something. 2 days later, Ryan texted me a new version of the pitch deck. Cleaned it up. Think you'll be impressed. Also, Mom says she's willing to apologize. Properly. Face to face. There it was. The hook. He knew my weakness. Closure. I replied with one sentence. You're not getting in through her. He tried again. You don't have to decide now. Just give it a week. Come to the old lake house next Sunday. Bring your laptop. We can build it from scratch. No tricks, no fluff. I'll show you what I've got. I stared at the message. Lake house. The same place from the photo Karen sent. The same place my grandfather once told me was the only place people acted like themselves. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I went. Alone. Not to meet Ryan. To see. The place hadn't changed much. Still smelled like cedar and charcoal and late summer rain. Dust on the shelves. Photos on the walls. Some of Ryan. Some of me. Mostly ignored. Until I found a folder in the back cabinet marked Estate Planning, Brooks Trust. Inside was a copy of the updated trust, the one after my grandfather passed. The version that went missing for years. The updated one? Split evenly. Between me and Ryan. But only one of us ever saw the check. I didn't tell Ryan I went to the lake house. Didn't text. Didn't hint. I just sat with it. That dusty folder. That updated will. The signature. The date. All of it undeniable. My grandfather had changed his mind. He'd seen the dynamic, the imbalance, the favoritism. And he tried to fix it. He split the inheritance evenly between me and Ryan. And somehow, someway, only Ryan got the payout. I brought it to Janice. She examined the signature, the legal seal, the timeline. It's real. And you were never notified. That's a problem. If the trust was executed and only one heir received funds, that's a breach. So I can sue? Yes. But the bigger question is, what do you want? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Not yet. Instead, I drove back to Indiana. To the house I hadn't visited in nearly 4 years. It was smaller than I remembered. Shabbier, too. The paint was peeling along the porch rails. One of the front windows had cardboard taped across it from the inside. The bushes looked like they'd given up. For all the online posturing, my parents weren't doing as well as they wanted people to believe. And when my dad opened the door, he didn't look surprised. Just tired. Ethan, he said. Didn't expect you. That's not true. He stepped aside. The house was dim. Musty. Smelled like unopened mail and cooking oil. My mother wasn't there. I didn't ask. We sat at the kitchen table. Same table from when I was 6, knees swinging above the floor, being told not to speak with food in my mouth. Now it was just 2 grown men, one of them still pretending he had authority. I found the trust, I said. The real one. The updated version. He didn't even flinch. Figured you might. Why didn't you tell me? He took a long breath. Because your grandfather was losing it by the end. He was confused. Said a lot of things. But he signed it. Had it witnessed. Had it sealed. I didn't think you'd do anything with it. So you made that decision for me? He looked at his hands. You left, Ethan. You never came back. You made yourself a ghost. No. You made me a ghost. I just stopped haunting the place. He didn't respond. I pulled out the envelope. Laid it on the table. You stole from me. We borrowed. We were going to explain. No, you weren't. There it was. The moment. The shift. He saw I wasn't asking for anything. Not an apology. Not restitution. Not reconciliation. Just truth. And he couldn't give it. Because that would mean admitting I mattered. Do you know what I've built? I asked. We've heard. Do you know how hard it was to get there, knowing this house wouldn't even acknowledge I'd left? We did what we could. No. You did what you wanted. You gave Ryan everything, then blamed me when I made something of myself without you. That's not. You taught me that love had conditions. I'm just choosing not to meet them anymore. He sat in silence. No defense. No denial. Just silence. Because the foundation had cracked, and there wasn't enough left to hold it up. I stood. I don't want the money. Then why are you here? To tell you I know. I left the folder on the table. Let them keep the money. It wasn't a gift. It was a chain. And I wasn't about to wear it just because they wanted to call it love. On the drive back, I called Aunt Karen. Told her everything. She was quiet for a moment. Then said, he tried to do the right thing, your grandfather. But legacies don't mean anything unless someone fights to remember them right. That night, I got a text from Ryan. I heard you visited. Dad says you didn't even yell. Just left. I didn't reply. Because what was there to say? He'd always waited for me to break. But this time, I just walked away. In the morning, I found an envelope at my front door. No postage. Hand-delivered. Inside was a photograph. My grandfather. Standing next to me at age 9. His arm around my shoulders. On the back, you were always seen. I just didn't know how to show it loud enough. No signature. Just ink. And finally, a little bit of peace. It was the second week of January when the envelope showed up. No return address. Just my name written in my mother's precise cursive, the same way she used to label the bins in the pantry. Ethan, no, dear. No warmth. No stamp. She had dropped it off herself. I didn't open it. I didn't even touch it for the first few hours. It sat on my kitchen counter, quiet and ominous, like it was waiting for me to flinch first. But I didn't. Because I already knew what it was. One more almost apology. One more you misunderstood. One more if you had just called. That afternoon, I poured a cup of coffee, walked to the recycling bin, and dropped the envelope in. Still sealed. Still heavy with everything she wasn't brave enough to say when it mattered. A few days later, I got a text from Aunt Karen. Your mom said she sent you a letter. You okay? I replied, I'm not reading anything that starts with a lie. Proud of you, she said. For what? For not letting them write your ending. In the weeks that followed, I started hearing from people I hadn't talked to in years. A cousin I used to play cards with at reunions. My high school English teacher who said she always knew I had a voice under all the silence. Even someone from my first job, someone who remembered how I covered for them when they were going through a divorce and couldn't focus. Small connections. Real ones. No agenda. No strings. Just people who remembered me as I was, not as someone else's shadow. And Ryan? He never followed up on the pitch. No emails. No texts. Nothing. Which told me everything I needed to know. If the project had legs, he would have chased me. If the idea had substance, he would have fought. But instead, like every other fragile performance, it crumbled when the spotlight shifted. I started writing again. Not code, not contracts. Essays. Personal ones. About family. About how survival looks different when the damage is polite. About how forgiveness isn't about letting people back in. It's about releasing the part of yourself that thinks you need their approval to breathe. I published one anonymously on a niche personal blog forum. It went viral within 2 days. People emailed me stories about parents who micromanaged their careers, about siblings who took and took, about love they were told to earn like credit points. One person wrote, I didn't know other people felt like this. Thank you. That meant more than anything Ryan ever said. More than any check. More than any final word from my parents. Because it meant I wasn't alone. And I never had been. One weekend, I visited the lake house again. Not out of sentimentality. Out of peace. I stood at the edge of the dock where I used to sit with my grandfather. Back when he still had the strength to bait a hook and the patience to listen to a boy who didn't say much. I looked out at the frozen water. Pulled the old locket he once gave me from my pocket, the one my parents never knew about. Inside it, a photo of us from when I was 6. And on the back, his handwriting, tell your story. Loud enough to be heard. Kind enough to be remembered. I do now. Not because they let me, but because they couldn't stop me. So here's the final truth. You don't owe people your silence just because they were loud first. You don't have to stay broken to make them feel whole. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to forgive. It's to walk away and never explain why. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it too.